Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Iglesias versus Ivanov fight. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like it if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Iglesias is 12-0 with 11 KOs, and Ivanov is 18-0-2 with 13 KOs. This fight is for the IBO World Super Middleweight title. Iglesias' last fight was a win via TKO in round 2 versus Agbeko, and Ivanov's last fight was a win via TKO in round 4 versus Bawada. Iglesias is a southpaw. Iglesias is 6'2.5", and Ivanov is a 5'11". And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I mentioned, this is Iglesias back to kind of main event in these shows, and these shows in which perhaps aren't really the biggest of shows. I mean, this one's out in Canada. Iglesias has fought a couple times on them Aegon events shows, and so they've been promoting him and putting him up a little bit, and then just in his last fight has his kind of big break in the performance versus Agbeko, where he was on top rank and it was on that Umbili undercard, and it was an impressive win for him and a good performance, and another impressive stoppage against a guy in Agbeko who had not, I don't think it ever been dropped before fighting Iglesias, and so to be able to drop him is first of all an impressive thing, but then to be able to go out there and stop him in just 2 rounds is very impressive. You can argue Agbeko had been past it a little bit, and has had a few tough fights where it has wore him down a bit, but still nonetheless that was a very impressive performance in a way to get his name out there and get his name about there. And after the stoppage win in which he had before, which was a destructive stoppage win in which pretty much went viral, the clip of it, where of course if you haven't seen it, the opponent he was in against got knocked out, and then it was a ruthless knockout, and he I don't really know how best to describe it. I would say go and watch the clip of Iglesias' second to last knockout if you have not done so already, and that's definitely helped bring him onto where he is now and project him onto where he is now. And of course, he's on this brutal run. He has this momentum, and he's carrying this momentum well. And now he's back to main eventing these shows, and he's in against a guy in Ivanov, which perhaps is him leaving this conventional route. Iglesias. I mean, Iglesias has fought Coqueres, he's fought Agbeko, and then Moderno as well, and a few other guys in which have been stepping stone fights in which a lot of super middleweights have fought against, or middleweights have fought against and progressed along with. But now against Ivanov, this is a kind of guy who's gonna test him. He's an unbeaten guy, of course. He's Ukrainian. He's had some good fights. He's on a really good knockout run himself, and like I say, he's really going to test Iglesias, and it's not going to be an easy fight. And like I said, this is him stepping away from perhaps this prospect and trying to actually create a real name for himself and a real push, because he is ranked highly in quite a few of the mandatory bodies. So he's definitely right up there and close to being able to get one of the, maybe not the title shots, but one of the huge names in the super middleweight division. He just needs to perhaps get a win against a guy who's, a tough name, or a name in which is going to create something. And I think an Ivanov win definitely could do that. And, of course, like I say, Ivanov is going to be a tough test. He has that Ukrainian amateur pedigree. Iglesias has that um, Cuban amateur pedigree. And so both of them, they have that high expectation, that high kind of level to live up to, that pressure to live up to. And when you think about Ukrainian boxing in the professional rankings at the moment, they're doing really well. I mean, Usyk, of course, undisputed champion of the world. Well, no, he was the undisputed heavyweight champion. He still should be, in my opinion. Bahachuk, he's got a fight versus Madrimov. Even though he's coming off a loss, he's still put up a very good performance against Ortiz and is still looking very impressive. Lomachenko, of course, is still about and still looking like he's able to really put on good performances. He's coming off a great win versus Cambosos Jr. He is having a bit of a break now and perhaps is considering retirement. But nonetheless, like I say, Ukrainian boxing is somewhat flying at the moment. And so an Ivanov guy, he could come up and could easily kind of steal the limelight and be a big name in this super middleweight division. So, like I say, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. And Iglesias, I think he's still trying to get this attention outside of Canada. He's had a bit of attention in Germany, had a bit of attention in Canada, but I still think he's trying to break the market going into America. And with Top Rank, I think he did that well with that last fight, but I still think he's struggling to quite break, like I say, the market in America and really create a name for himself there. And like I mentioned, I feel like this fight could do that for both of these fighters. And it's not a bad card. It's a good Canadian card in which there is some talent there, there is some names there, and I mean Stephen Butler's on this card. So just name a name who's has fought for a world title and has been about, even though perhaps not always been getting the wins in recent times, he's still been about and he's back returning as well. So like I say, this isn't a bad show whatsoever, and it's still Canada putting on good shows. And like I say, Iglesias is one of the kind of standout guys. Well, not coming from Canada, but fighting out of Canada quite a lot at the moment, alongside, like I say, on Beeley as well. He's quite often fighting outside of Canada now. Um, and like I say, Iglesias as a southpaw, as such a big southpaw as well, it's difficult for other opponents to be able to deal with that, to be able to counteract that. And, of course, so far, nobody else has really been able to counteract, the height, the aggressive southpaw style in which he has. And to speak more about him, of course, he's strong, he's powerful. He's proved that with, like I say, the brutal run in which he's on. He's also, when you look at him, you can see how strong and how powerful he is. And he's tall, strong, and powerful. Three attributes in which you really want to have, and it's great to have. He controls the centre well, but so does Ivanov. And I think it's going to be two fighters in which perhaps are going to be wanting the centre of the ring. I mean, Iglesias, I think, is perhaps the one more comfortable on the back foot than that of Ivanov. We've seen him go on the back foot a couple of times. I mean, even in that second to last fight where he got that really impressive knockout, I apologise, I can't remember the name of the opponent. He was on the back foot and he waited and he set up that shot nicely. In that last fight, perhaps he was trying to be the aggressive and really put out a statement win, so he wanted to be on the front foot and wanted to control the centre. But like I say, I think he can do both relatively well. He punches around the guard and definitely does that well, and did that very well versus Agbeko, just going around the guard and halting any work in which Agbeko was coming with, because he was just able to get past that high tight guard in which he was covering up with. He changes levels well. He lets his hands go. I think he's growing in confidence letting his hands go now. He doesn't necessarily have to land clean to have success to hurt you. I mean, when he dropped Agbeko, I don't think he landed overly clean, but like I say, with that strength, with that power, it was enough to, of course, damage and hurt Agbeko and then drop him. He doesn't load up on his work too much. He's got a nice tight guard. He can fight at a mid or an in close range. He's relatively well at controlling the tempo. Perhaps he can fight at varied tempos, and it seems like that is the case. And he doesn't seem to smother his work either. Even with him being such a tall guy fighting on the inside, you quite often see a lot of these taller fighters, when they do get on inside, they kind of smother, they don't really know what to do, it doesn't look comfortable. And you've seen that with the likes of, just to name a name, like a Lawrence Okoli in recent times. But Iglesias doesn't seem to smother his work. Negatives about him, I think he does stand tall, quite tall, so does Ivanov, so I think they're both quite big targets to be hit. I think he doesn't always plant his feet too comfortably, and I think perhaps he was a little bit more nervous in that Agbeko fight, like I say, trying to get the stoppage, and I think he wasn't planting his feet excellently, and it kind of affected his balance a bit. His defensive movement, like I say, I think he is the one more comfortable on the back foot, but I still don't think his defensive movement as a whole is anything that impressive. He can follow you around the ring. I don't think he cuts off the ring that well, and saying the size of him, I think he could definitely cut off the ring better than what he does, and I think Ivanov does that better than him. He has his head on the line. I think he doesn't necessarily work angles as well as which he could do. I think his movement around him, his kind of pivoting, if you're able to move him around and go around Iglesias, Iglesias can struggle to track you. His punch variation sometimes is a little bit more limited than that of, in my opinion, Ivanov. His creating of gaps in general isn't anything too impressive, and perhaps overconfidence could be a thing which could come into this fight. After that, again, forgot to say the name. That's that statement knockout in which he had in that second to last fight. He was, dancing around. I suppose you'd be happy, you'd be confident, you'd be like, wow, what's just happened if he did that? But a lot of people didn't like how he was dancing around when his opponent was out the way he was, and he didn't really seem to have too much remorse for him or anything like that. And so, perhaps he is coming with a level of overconfidence where he isn't really respecting his opponents enough, or perhaps isn't really, I don't know. Just like I said, perhaps he is overlooking his opponents, and in general, he doesn't normally seem to want to take a back foot. If he is the one wanting to be on the front foot, then he doesn't normally want to take a back foot and is normally willing to take a back foot, unless he chooses to circle around on the back foot, if that makes sense. To speak about Ivanov as a fighter, he's also a strong guy. Perhaps a bit less powerful, but like I say, he's on a stoppage winning run at the moment, a streak of just knockouts himself. They are against lesser opponents. He hasn't had the opportunities in which Iglesias has had to fight the level of opponents Iglesias has had, and he's still getting the stoppage wins nonetheless, and that's all you can really do. And like I say, he is also a strong guy who's also going to let his hands go as well. He's again also a come forward type fighter, and like I say, isn't again somebody who's going to really want to take a back foot, a back step. He sets a high tempo and is able to keep to it relatively well. I think if this does go to 12 round distance, it could be interesting to see who's able to handle the pace and handle the 12 round distance better. But like I say, typically Ivanov does set that high tempo. He wants to be in the pocket most of the time. If he's able to get in the pocket versus Iglesias' jab isn't always something that's really going to stop you from getting in close. I think he could perhaps utilize it a little bit better. So if Ivanov is able to get in close, he could have success. He tries to impose himself physically and is normally against these smaller guys, so is able to do that. But I don't necessarily know if he's really fought somebody like an Iglesias where he is the much smaller guy, and I think that's definitely going to play a factor. I think, like I say, he works openings better. I think he works angles better. I think he picks the shots of his a bit better. Ivanov, he breaks you down. He's can typically want to fight, like I say, in close and doesn't really utilize a jab too much, or isn't really as good at mid range. I think he does square up and just kind of when he's in mid range, he squares up a bit and then just kind of throws any straight shot that he wants. And like I say, is then a very big target to be hit. He doesn't let you out though when he gets you on the ropes, and is definitely able to close off the ring better than that of Iglesias. Negatives about him, I think his head's on the line. I think his chin's in the air, and I think them two things, alongside him standing tall as well as what I said Iglesias does as well, them three things defensive wise is never really something that's nice to see. I think he has quite wobbly footwork. I don't think it's too comfortable if he does get caught with shots, and I think he does struggle dealing with combinations and dealing with somebody matching that high output of himself. Like I say, he does square up. I think he stays in range too long. So again, um, is a big target and is able to get hit quite a lot. I think he does look overly comfortable. I think not overly confident, but overly comfortable. I think he's too relaxed sometimes when he's fighting, and can be predictable how he is just going to be continuously just kind of strolling forwards. And if Iglesias is able to catch him when he's coming forwards, like he did versus Beko, or like he has done in fights, then he can definitely get caught with shots and hurt Ivanov doing that. And I think he has the lesser speed than that of Iglesias. Iglesias is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Iglesias is going to win via TKO in round 5. I think it's going to be a continuation of the knockout streak in which he has right now, and it's going to be another impressive knockout against, like I say, an unbeaten guy who hasn't been tested, but isn't a name known by people, but like I say, still undefeated. So like I say, I think it's going to be a big win for him, an impressive win for him. I think Ivanov is just going to keep coming forwards, and Iglesias is going to let that happen. But when Iglesias lets his hands go with the good combinations in which he does throw, then he's going to have success, and he's going to hurt Ivanov and get him out of there relatively early on in the fight. Then if he could go on to fight next, I think it's going to be intriguing to see. I would like to see him in against one of the better, top contenders in the super middleweight division, but at the same time, there's no real rush. So I think there are lots of good names around in the super middleweight division, and perhaps he could fight somebody in which nobody has really heard but is got high ranking, or he could fight somebody who he could fight for a world title against, like William Skill for that IBF belt. I think people are going to be queuing up for that IBF belt after Skill's last performance, because perhaps they see it as an easy belt to get in that division, and so perhaps Iglesias could get that shot versus Skill. They both fought in Germany, so perhaps that could be the case. If not, Bazinian of course has had success out in Canada. Of course went to fight Munguia and didn't have the best success there, and it wasn't really the best performances for himself, and it wasn't really anything that's going to be that impressive. But he's still got a very good record, and for Iglesias to step up, that could be a good step up to be made. And with Bazinian not really having any kind of seemingly promotional deal with anybody, and like I say, fighting in Canada regularly, that could be an easy fight to be made. And like I say, a big step up, but perhaps a good step up. Otherwise, somebody like a Sajo, Lele Sajo, could be a good fight. He's European champion, so as another guy who hasn't really got any kind of big promotional deal, but he's got a good record as well, that could be a very tough test. Perhaps that is too soon for him. 23-0, I believe Sergio is, but hasn't really been tested too much himself. So, like I say, I think there are multiple different options out there. It's going to be interesting to see how quick they're going to try and progress Iglesias' management, and how quick they're going to try and get him to a world title fight. I think with the progression he's making at the moment, he can definitely be moved quite fast, and he is moving quite fast in general. But like I say, he's a very entertaining fighter, and he's got, I'm sure, a bright future. But that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like it if you did, like this, subscribe if you are new, and thanks for watching.